Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive curated just for the Vintage Car Chronicles show. You can catch us daily on Spotify, Deezer, Apple Music, and YouTube, right?
Right.
So today, we're going to dig into a car that you guys requested, the Buick Riviera.
Ooh, a classic.
Yeah. And what's so cool about the Riviera is it really embodies this whole personal luxury car thing. Like,
Absolutely.
it was really a pioneer in that segment. It's marketed by Buick for, a long time.
Yeah, from 1963 to 1999, actually, except for a little break in 94.
Right, right.
And they produced over 1 million of these cars.
Wow, over 1 million.
Yeah, across 8 generations, each one kind of reflecting the design trends and technology of its time.
8 generations. That's a pretty long run for a car model.
Yeah.
And speaking of time, the name Riviera, it just screams luxury, That makes me think of the French Riviera, those beautiful coastlines.
It's funny you should say that.
Yeah.
Because the name Riviera actually goes all the way back to 1949. Buick used it on the Roadmaster.
Really? So it predates the actual Riviera model.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't a model name back then, though. They used it as a designation for a hardtop style.
Oh, interesting. What kind of hardtop?
Specifically the pillarless hardtop.
Ah, okay. So no D-pillar between the windows.
Yep. It gave the car this wide open look, very elegant.
Oh, yeah. I can see how that would fit the whole luxury vibe.
And Buick really ran with that name.
They did.
They slapped it on all sorts of models, sometimes even four-door sedans.
Four-door sedans. That's a bit of a stretch for the Riviera image, don't you think?
Yeah, maybe a little. But eventually it stuck as a premium trim level, like for the Electra 225 in 1959.
Ah, so by the time the actual Riviera model came out in '63, people already associated the name with luxury.
Exactly, they'd built up that brand recognition.
Color marketing. But okay, let's talk about the birth of the Riviera we all know and love, the 1963 model. What led to its creation?
Competition, my friend.
Competition.
Yeah, in the late 50s, the Ford Thunderbird was dominating the personal luxury car scene.
Right, the T-Bird, yeah.
And GM needed a contender. So they started working on this experimental Cadillac called the XP715.
XP715. Catchy.
Well, it had a nickname too, the LaSalle.
Ah, okay. So what happened to it? Why didn't it become the Thunderbird rival?
Well, it had this really angular, sharp design. It was actually inspired by a custom Rolls-Royce that Bill Mitchell, GM's head of design, had seen in London.
Oh, wow. A Cadillac inspired by a Rolls-Royce. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, but ultimately Cadillac passed on it.
Really?
Yeah, but Buick saw potential.
Interesting. So Buick kind of swooped in and snatched up this rejected design.
Pretty much. Well, with the help of an ad agency, they managed to convince GM that it would work for the Riviera. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Wow, so the first generation Riviera was basically a rescued concept car. That's a pretty cool origin story.
It is, and it really set the stage for the Riviera's legacy. This car, the '63 model, had its own unique body, which was pretty rare for GM back then.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Most GM divisions shared platforms and stuff, but the Riviera was special, right?
Yeah. It was. They gave it that distinctive Coke bottle shape, and it's still considered one of the most beautiful American car designs ever.
Yeah, the Coke bottle Riviera, it's iconic.
It is. And, it wasn't just about the looks either. They really focused on performance, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the '63 Riviera was actually smaller and lighter than a LeSabre, but it had the same powerful V8 engine.
Whoa, that's a recipe for some serious fun.
Oh, yeah. It could go for 0 to 60 in under 8 seconds and had a top speed of 115 miles per hour.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, it was a luxury cruiser that could really move. And of course, they didn't skimp on the luxurious features either. It had bucket seats, a center console, walnut trim, power options, the whole 9 yards.
So it was luxurious, sporty, powerful. Sounds like they really nailed it with that first generation.
They did. And to top it off, in 1965, they introduced the Grand Sport package.
The Grand Sport?
Yep. It had an even more powerful engine, the Super Wildcat 360 horsepower engine, and it also had a heavier suspension for even better handling. Ah, so for those who wanted even more performance, the Grand Sport was the way to go.
Exactly. And it wasn't just American car enthusiasts who were impressed with the Riviera.
No. Who else was a fan?
Well, Sir William Lyons, the founder of Jaguar, he called the Riviera a wonderful job.
Wow, high praise from the Jaguar founder himself.
And Sergio Pininfarina, the legendary Italian car designer, called it one of the most beautiful American cars ever built.
That's saying something. To get those kinds of compliments from such big names in the car world.
Yeah, the first generation Riviera really made a splash.
It did. But as we know, the Riviera's design evolved over the years. Each generation had its own unique story to tell.
It did. And some of those stories were more controversial than others.
Oh, I bet. The Riviera went through some pretty radical transformations, especially in the 70s.
It did. Like the second generation, they really leaned into that fastback roofline, giving it a whole new look.
Yeah, the second generation is where things start to get really interesting. Oh, definitely. And we'll dive into all those design changes and the stories behind them right after.
Sounds good. No breaks on this deep dive.
Nope. We're just getting started. So that second generation Riviera, it really embraced this bolder American muscle car aesthetic.
Yeah, definitely had a different vibe from the first generation.
Yeah, like bigger, bolder, more curves, a real presence on the road.
It's funny how car designs kind of mirror what's going on in society, you know?
Totally. The late 60s were all about that boldness, that sense of power. And the Riviera, it totally reflected that.
It did. And they went all in on that fastback roofline, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. It was way more pronounced, gave the car this sleek, almost aerodynamic look.
Speaking of aerodynamic, I read somewhere that Buick actually considered making the Riviera front-wheel drive around this time.
Yeah. The Oldsmobile Toronado, which was on the same platform as Riviera, actually did go front-wheel drive in 66.
Right, the Toronado. But Buick stuck with rear-wheel drive.
They did, at least for a few more generations. Maybe they wanted to keep that classic, powerful feel of our rear-wheel drive car.
Yeah, could be. But even though they were going for this more American muscle car look, they didn't skimp on the luxury.
Oh, no, not at all. Actually, the interior got even more spacious in the second generation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you could choose between bucket seats or a bench seat.
Nice.
And it could fit 6 passengers comfortably. Plus, you still had all the luxury features you'd expect in a Riviera: power windows, power seats, premium sound system, the works.
It's almost like they were trying to attract buyers who were also looking at those full-size luxury sedans.
Yeah.
You know?
Maybe. It was still marketed as a personal luxury car, but they definitely put more emphasis on comfort and practicality with the second generation.
Yeah, makes sense. It's like they wanted to say, hey, you can have style and sportiness and D-space for the family.
Exactly. And of course, they kept the Grand Sport option.
Of course.
Yep.
Got to have that performance option.
Oh, yeah. And in 1967, they introduced a 430 cubic inch V8 for the Grand Sport, which gave it even more muscle.
Nice. So more power, more space, more luxury. Did all those changes pay off?
They did. Sales for the second generation were consistently higher than the first.
Right.
And the 68 model year actually set a new sales record for the Riviera.
It seems like they found a winning formula then.
Yeah, for sure. They managed to evolve the Riviera's design while still staying true to its essence, that unique blend of luxury and sportiness.
Pretty impressive, really.
It is. But knowing the Riviera, they weren't done experimenting with the design.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. The third generation, which came out in 71, was probably the most radical departure from the original Riviera design.
This is where we get the infamous boat tail, right?
You got it.
The boat tail. Such a polarizing design, but honestly, I kind of love it.
Yeah, you got to admire the boldness. It was definitely a statement piece.
It was. It's so unapologetically American, so over the top. I love it.
It was Bill Mitchell's brainchild, you know? The head of design at GM.
Right.
He was always pushing the boundaries, and the 71 Riviera was probably his most daring creation.
It really was. I read somewhere that he got the inspiration for the boat tail from the 1963 Corvette Stingray coupe.
Yeah. He loved those flowing lines of the Stingray. He wanted to bring that sense of speed and agility to the Riviera, but also make it even more dramatic, even more eye-catching.
And the boat tail definitely achieved that.
For sure. It's so interesting how he mixed inspiration from a sporty car like the Stingray with a big, luxurious coupe.
It is. The 71 Riviera was like a fusion of opposites.
Exactly. It had that sleekness of a coupe, but the size and presence of a luxury sedan. And that boat tail just added to the drama.
It must turn heads everywhere it went.
It definitely did. It was very polarizing even back then. Some people loved it, some people hated it. But one thing's for sure, it made a statement.
So they went bold with the exterior. What about the interior? Did it match the drama of the boat tail?
Oh, yeah, they went all out. The dashboard kind of wrapped around and flowed into the door panels.
I've seen pictures of it. It's wild.
Yeah, created this cockpit-like feel for the driver. And they also introduced an optional sunroof, so you could enjoy open-air cruising.
Nice. It sounds like they really wanted to create a unique driving experience with the third generation.
Yeah, like the driver was at the center of it all, surrounded by luxury and that feeling of command.
And that boat tail. with that low roofline and those curves must have really added to that feeling of being cocooned in style.
Totally.
What about the engine? Did they keep the 455 V8?
They did, but with those stricter emission standards, they had to reduce the power output.
Yeah, that was a bummer for performance cars back then.
Yeah. It was still a good engine, smooth and powerful, just not quite as punchy as the earlier versions.
It's fascinating how those outside factors, like emissions regulations, really shaped the design and engineering of cars back then.
Yeah, it's a whole other story, really. But the Riviera was actually pretty fuel efficient for its time, especially considering its size and all the luxury features.
Interesting. So they managed to find some balance between performance and efficiency, even with those regulations.
They did. But the boat tail design, as awesome as it is, it did have its critics.
Yeah, wasn't for everyone.
And sales for the third generation actually dipped a little compared to the second generation.
Maybe it was just a little too much for some people.
Maybe. Not everyone was ready for such a radical departure from the Riviera's traditional look.
I think it's a shame because it's such a cool and unique car.
It is. But maybe it was just ahead of its time.
Maybe. But at least it's earned a cult following over the years.
Oh, yeah. These boat-tail Rivieras are definitely sought after by collectors these days.
It's funny how a car that was considered controversial can become a classic later on.
It is. But the Riviera's story wasn't over yet. In '74, they came out with the fourth generation, and they decided to shake things up again.
Oh, really? How so? What did they do with the fourth generation?
Well, with the fourth generation, which ran from '74 to '76, they decided to tone it down a bit. Move away from that whole boat tail extravagance.
Yeah, it was a pretty wild design.
It was. And for the fourth generation, they kind of went for a more restrained, formal look.
More traditional.
Yeah, exactly. Longer, lower, wider, but with a more conventional roofline.
It sounds like they were trying to win back those buyers who weren't into the boat tail, the ones who preferred a more classic look.
Yeah. It was definitely more in line with Buick's other models at the time, like the LeSabre and Electra, more of a family-friendly luxury vibe.
Right, right. But did they still keep those signature Riviera features? Or did they go all in on this new, more traditional direction?
Oh, no, they kept all the good stuff. The interior was still super plush, with all the power options you could want, power windows, power seats, premium sound system. They definitely didn't skimp on the luxury.
That's good to hear. Luxury was always a big part of the Riviera's appeal. What about the engine? Did they stick with the 455 V8?
They did. But unfortunately, those emission standards were getting stricter and stricter, so they had to keep reducing the power output.
Oh, man, that's too bad. It seems like those regulations really put a damper on performance during that era.
They did. It was a tough time for performance cars. But Buick did offer a Stage 1 package for the fourth generation, which included a higher performance version of the 455.
Oh, so they still had something for those who craved a little more power.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But overall, I think it's fair to say that the fourth generation kind of marked a shift away from the Riviera's sporty image. It was still a stylish and capable car, just not the performance machine it once was.
Interesting. It seems like the Riviera was always evolving, always adapting to the times.
It was. And with the fifth generation, they made an even bigger change.
Oh, yeah? What did they do?
They finally embraced front-wheel drive.
Wow. No more rear-wheel drive Riviera. That's a pretty significant change.
It was. The fifth generation, which ran from '79 to '85, was a totally new platform. They downsized the car, made it smaller and lighter.
Sounds like they were going for a more modern, fuel-efficient approach.
Yeah, exactly. Efficiency and practicality were the main goals. And to boost fuel economy even more, they introduced a turbocharged V6 engine.
A turbocharged V6 and a Riviera? That's a pretty big departure from those big V8s.
It was. But it was a sign of the times, really. Automakers were starting to downsize engines and embrace turbocharging to meet those fuel efficiency standards.
Right, right.
And, that turbo V6 actually performed really well.
Yeah, I've heard that those turbo engines from that era could be pretty peppy.
They could.
Yeah.
So yeah, the fifth generation was smaller, lighter, more fuel efficient. It was like a Riviera for a new era.
It was. But did they keep any of those classic Riviera design cues in this new, more modern version?
Oh yeah. It was still recognizable as a Riviera. It had a more angular aerodynamic design, but you could still see hints of that classic long hood, short deck proportion.
Oh, okay.
And of course, they kept that distinctive Riviera grille. It was a cool blend of contemporary and classic.
I like that. Sounds like they were trying to strike a balance between staying true to the Riviera's heritage and moving forward with a more modern design.
Exactly. And they didn't just focus on the looks either. They actually introduced some pretty advanced features for the time.
Like what?
They had digital instrumentation, a touchscreen interface, stuff that seems pretty standard now, but back in the early 80s, that was cutting-edge technology.
It's amazing how far car technology has come, isn't it?
It really is. So yeah, they were really trying to push the Riviera into the future with the fifth generation.
And did it work? Was this new, more modern Riviera a success?
It was. Sales were good, and it even won Motor Trend's Car of the Year award in 1979.
Wow, car of the year. That's pretty impressive. But I'm guessing the Riviera story didn't end there. What came next?
Well, the sixth and seventh generations, which ran from 86 to 93, basically saw them continuing to refine that front-wheel drive platform.
Okay.
They kept adding more technology like anti-lock brakes, traction control, even a head-up display.
Wow, a head-up display back then. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It was high-tech stuff for the time. But unfortunately, the market for big personal luxury coupes was starting to shrink.
Makes sense. People were starting to favor smaller, more fuel-efficient cars, right?
Yeah.
Plus, SUVs were becoming more and more popular.
Exactly. So even though the Riviera was still a great car, it was facing some tough competition.
So what happened? Did the Riviera just fade away?
Not quite. Buick gave it one last hurrah with the eighth generation, which debuted in 95.
The final Riviera, what was it like?
Well, for the eighth generation, they decided to go back to the Riviera's roots. They brought back some of those classic design elements, the long hood, short deck profile, that waterfall grille.
Ah, so a bit of a throwback design.
Yeah. But they also gave it a modern twist. It had a sleek aerodynamic look, and they put a powerful supercharged V6 engine under the hood.
Sounds like they were trying to recapture some of that Riviera magic, blending nostalgia with modern performance.
They were. It was a really impressive car. But unfortunately, the market for personal luxury coupes had shrunk even more by the late 90s.
Oh man, that's too bad.
Yeah, it was kind of a case of the right car at the wrong time.
So the eighth generation marked the end of the Riviera's run.
It did. Production ended in 99. It's sad to see a legend go, but, the Riviera left its mark on the automotive world. It went through so many changes over the years, reflecting those changing tastes and times.
It did. It really was a reflection of American automotive design and engineering.
It was. From those stylish beginnings to those bold experiments with the boat tail, and then embracing all that new technology, the Riviera story is pretty amazing.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Buick Riviera. We covered a lot today, from its origins as a pillarless hardtop to its final farewell in '99.
It was quite a journey.
Yeah. And a huge thanks to all of you for joining us. Remember to check out Vintage Car Chronicles every day for a new episode. You can find us on Spotify, Deezer, Apple Music, and YouTube. We've got plenty more deep dives to share, exploring all those fascinating corners of the automotive world. Until next time.